Welcome to the Stories in EDU podcast, the show where we talk with real educators and hear their powerful impact. Their stories will grab you, inspire you, and show you the reach of the work we do. And now, the Bretzman Group presents your hosts, Josh Gauthier and Mandy Taylor.
Welcome back to the Stories in EDU podcast. The podcast is all about great stories told by educators around the country and the world. And it's always exciting to hear new stories every week from those that are out there doing the work, just like you, who's probably listening to this right now. Mandy, how are things going for you today?
Today things are going well. We are, I'm in Texas, of course, and we were in the 70s, mid-70s yesterday, and this morning it was 34 when I went to school. So we never know. But all is well. We're just busy. This is a really busy time of the year, and teachers, you can tell, are feeling the stress. So I always love to hear how things are going across the country, and it kind of helps me put my own unique situation in perspective. So I'm excited about tonight.
Absolutely. And perspective is really so important. And that's one of the best parts about this, is to really share that teacher perspective. In one way, the big hope is that we can all see how we're all in this together. We all have similar experiences, and even the different experiences we can relate to in some way. And I think it just gives a greater appreciation for the profession as a whole. So speaking about the weather, somebody who probably doesn't have to complain too much about the weather is our guest tonight, Sam Patterson. Sam, how's it going?
It was like 28 this morning.
In California?
In Southern California, actually. It climbed up to about 60 today, but we've actually had a cold snap. And up at the house, because I actually have a ranch 120 miles away from the school I teach at. So during the week, I have a room in the city. And on the weekend, I'm out with my wife and the llamas on the ranch. And at the ranch, we are bracing for snow. We're really concerned the pipes are going to bust. It's like the least fun time of year because it's not really ready for this. And the last time it's acted like this was when we first moved out there, and we got 33 inches of snow in a place where it never snows, where we have dirt roads. It was not fun.
That's crazy.
That is...
What was crazy was I was working in San Francisco at the time, and it was an 8-hour drive home. And I get home, and it's midnight. And in driving, I'd come through a bunch of snow. And when I got to the road to my house, it had not been plowed, would not be plowed. 30-some inches of snow. I'm in a little, I think, Ford Escort hatchback at that point. I have an affinity for small white cars, right? And I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Illinois, and we had some snow there, I tell you what, right? So I'm like, well, it's a 1-mile long road, and it's all mostly straight. I don't feel like walking through the snow. I'm going to see how far I can get before the car gets stuck, and then I'll leave the car there and figure it out in the morning. And I got all the way to my driveway, but when I play that movie back in my head, it's a lot more video game than reality. So
that is incredible. Could you tell everyone what it is that you do? And we'll have to double back to the llama farming thing, because that's not probably the number one thing on your priority list.
It's usually not the first identifier. I am a makerspace team coordinator the makerspace team coordinator at Echo Horizon School, a pre-K through 6th grade school in Southern California, very close to Sony Studios.
Wow, that is quite the spot. How long have you been there for?
This is my 2nd year, and it is amazing. Prior to this, I taught as a technology integration specialist at a elementary school for a couple years. And before that, I spent 12 years teaching high school English, and I have a doctorate in literacy education. So in some ways, you might think, wow, that seems like you might be a little over-prepared to teach in a makerspace, but I think I know almost enough because we end up doing, makerspace is really the most wonderful literacy opportunity in the world. And everybody who's going nuts about coding and gears and the science stuff, yeah, that's great. But what they don't see is how much hands-on, rubber hit the road, reading and writing happens in that space.
Absolutely. So I have to ask, and this is the beauty of an audio podcast because this is going to play really well in audio, but Sam, what are you doing with those kids' pants?
Right? What, these pants? So today was amazing. I found myself in the middle of the 6th grade class with a pre-K student's pants in my hands as I'm trying to fix the giant hole in them. This poor young man, Peter, just the cutest little guy in the world, is, really great student. And one of the other students came to get one of the teachers and said, Peter's on the climbing gym and he won't come down because he ripped his pants. And there's a rip in his pants in like the worst spot you could think of to rip your pants. And it's, as long as his hand. This rip is huge, right? It's just like the pants are no longer really working as pants for most of it. And this, of course, is somewhat traumatic, right? Because, oh my goodness, remember that day at school when you ripped your pants so bad everyone could see your underwear? Like, it's that day for Peter, right? So we got him inside, and it wasn't a big deal. And then he was able to change into a classmate's extra set of pants. And I said, okay, guys, let me have his pants, and I'll fix them. And the teacher's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to do a great job, but I can patch his pants enough that he's, embarrassed about something else. And we got his pants fixed, and he ended up having a great, the day turned into the day Dr. Patterson fixed his pants at school, not the day where he ripped his pants and was, woefully embarrassed. And that's one of the really great things about the makerspace and that school and the community we've got going there is it's actually a really useful space, right? We fix stuff. Kids bring stuff in that's broken and we help them fix it. I've fixed kids' sweater. There was one girl whose sweater unraveled and like the arm was coming off, and we managed to get her sweater put back together even though I know nothing about knitting. And, it was one of those, okay, well, it's not perfect, but you're also not half naked anymore. So you can get through the rest of the day and get home. And, these kids are all well cared for. I don't mean to make it sound like I go to a school where the kids' clothes are falling apart. But when their clothes do fall apart, I'm there. No, wait, no, I didn't say that. When their clothes do fall apart, we have the tools to fix them, right? Well, and the makerspace. Yes.
Sorry. Working in an elementary school, all of what you're saying is not even weird. It's just a taste, right? I mean, there are things that wardrobe malfunctions happen, all day long. And not even just clothing, but there are constantly things that, are broken. And I think kind of what you're saying is this idea of relevance, that when kids see a purpose for whatever it is they're working on, it makes so much more sense about the necessity of it. That's why kids always ask, when am I going to use this? Or why is this important? And it seems like the older kids get, the more they kind of ask those questions. And it's our responsibility to kind of help them see the reasoning, and you were talking about
right, because they want to know, like, this is my time too, right? Why are we here doing this thing together? Why do you need me to know this thing? Why? And I'll tell kids, I'll be like, look, I've got you doing this thing, and I've set it up to make you do it the hard way because it's important to me that you do it the hard way. And they're like, ugh, you're so obnoxious, old man. Okay, but they get that what they're doing. But if I was just to say, well, you're going to learn to sew because everybody needs to make a puppet, they'd be like, no, I don't think you're right about that. But if instead they see that, I can make a puppet with my sewing, I can also fix clothes with my sewing, I can also make clothes with my sewing, when they want to do one of those things, they say, hey, can you teach me to sew, right? And the number of boys in my classes that ask me to teach them how to use the sewing machine is almost 100%. And it's the kind of thing that, what I've discovered teaching in the makerspace is I'm not necessarily teaching my whole class to sew ever. right? I'll teach every single one of them to sew at different times.
Right.
But if we've got it structured, because I don't have 22 sewing machines, right? And that sounds insane. How could I watch 22 kids sew, right? Like the working in the makerspace has really given me the opportunity to deconstruct any value in the idea of class set,
Right.
while at the same time learning how student choice really interacts with the idea of class set, right? Because if I have a class set of something, there's not any longer much student choice in what's about to happen because we're all about to do the same thing.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's also really hard to find situations where you can get kids comfortable with, like, we're all going to do different things now.
Right. Well, kids and adults. I find that a lot of the classrooms where I'm in, when the less, it's not so much structure, because I think a lot of times student-centered classrooms have great and many structures, but it's not teacher directed. You know, I was talking to a teacher today, and she was working through something, and she always is like this. She's so reflective, and she's like, okay, just listen. I'm going to talk through it. And I was like, that's my favorite part of being an instructional coach, is being the one that gets to just listen to the genius of these teachers. And she was like, so instead of having, she's doing a blended pilot, and she was like, instead of having a station rotation model, today I really just wanted the kids to get to they just need to go to what they need to go to. I don't want everybody to be here 15 minutes and then the timer go off and everybody have to rotate, and to make sure. And so afterwards, she had videoed the kids reflecting on the experience. And the kids were like, you know, she was showing me the video of what the kids said. And one kid was like, I really didn't know if I liked it, because I like knowing that I'm going to have time to finish all 3, you know, tasks or jobs or whatever. And, but everybody else said, I didn't panic because I didn't feel the stress of the timer. Like, I knew I could just do it. And I know that this station doesn't take me as long as that one. So it helped me kind of just know that if this one took longer, it was okay, because this one wasn't going to be. And I was like, it reminded me of Joy Kerr, how she's kind of talked about when something happens and a kid says something and she's like, I don't know, what do you think? That kids are real uncomfortable with that, not know, you know, because we've kind of dictated everything to them and every choice for them. And so giving them the power to make those decisions for themselves, you know, I think that's a great idea. Like you're saying, you have to share. You have to learn how to function. You have to learn how to make it work as a classroom community, or, you know, in your makerspace, how that's going to work, because the idea of a class set, it's really personalized learning.
Right. And, you know, we've got all kinds of different names for it, but this is something that I learned originally as a writing teacher, and specifically working with the National Writing Project. The, you know, ideas of choice and voice in student writing are huge, and they're transformational. The reason I became a teacher was because one of my teachers actually read the words I wrote and interacted with my ideas. And that was like, oh, wait, really? Because up until that point, junior year of high school, it had just been a fairly, except for first grade, that was awesome, Mrs. Keith, still rocking it. But, you know, it was very anonymous, right? And I was, you know, mildly in trouble most of the time because I was, you know, me. And, but that moment where it's like, oh, wait, so my writing can communicate ideas? How come no one ever told me this before? Then when I got into teaching, it was really because of that experience of writing and being able to express my ideas, so that as a teacher, the things I gravitated towards, in my early teaching, found myself in arguments with colleagues who were saying what I was doing was fluff, you know, teaching fluff, and, you know, just being too, you know, too loud always, too nice, you know, these, not enough hard grammar, not enough hard this, like, the experience of my class wasn't punishing enough. My grades were too high, et cetera. Right. But
I've gotten, everything's a party in your class. I've gotten that one before.
Well,
Guilty.
and the people who end up parked next to me, I'm like, sorry. Right. Yeah. But, I try to get them donuts sometimes. But right, because it's loud because we're learning, and there's no real apologizing for that. But in the makerspace, all of that holds true, right? The most important things that we make in my makerspace, and I say this all the time, the most important things we make are decisions. Mm-hmm. And because I'm working with pre-K through 6th grade, right? They don't have to know Python programming before 7th grade.
Right.
Some of them will, and I'll learn it right alongside them as they learn it, and I'll forget it 2 minutes later, because that's the way programming works in my brain, and that's cool, and I can get them there. But the real magic behind the makerspace that I've found is when I'm brave enough to create situations where students not only can choose what to do, but feel empowered to make good choices. Right now, my 2nd grade, I came up with this great idea. And it was one of those ideas where you're like, oh, wow, it takes 3.5 seconds to say that idea. That's neat. I should do it. And then you're like, oh, wow, it's going to take all 1 year to actually hit right. the visible part of that idea. And the idea was that we would have a small online store for the 2nd grade where we could sell some of the things they made. And then we could take any money that was made and donate it to causes working for equity. And the broad idea is, it's in the shorthand I use is Etsy for equity, or made for equity. And it gives us an opportunity to have small conversations about equity in 2nd grade, while at the same time I get to teach them how to use a sewing machine, how to pattern. And I've actually got a fairly, for me, directed curriculum where we all started on one project, and then we all went to a different project, and then we all went to a 3rd project, and then we went to a 4th project. And then this past week, what we did at the beginning of class was I said, you guys remember we've done this, and this. I'm going to give you a piece of paper. You're going to tell me what you want to do next. And then they wrote that down. I said, now draw a picture of that, because I need 5 more minutes to get the room in order. Right. Got a 90-minute class.
Authentic writing activity. You mean authentic student choice is what you meant.
Totally, because I need them to actually imagine what they're doing before they get into the materials a little bit, right? They make a plan. Making a plan is really important. Fun fact, if they make a plan, you can connect it to NGSS. I can't remember which one of the standards, but, sketching a diagram, making a plan, it's there in all of them. It's, connects it to writing too. So they make a plan. I collect up the plans, and they got to work. And some of them chose to do some of the things like the first project we did. Some of them chose to finish some of the other projects. They were legitimately self-directing. I had 3 sewing machines going, so I spent most of my time threading sewing machines and making sure students were being safe. And I had a couple other teachers in the room with me, and we had about 22 2nd graders. At the end of class, I handed out their sheets again, and I asked them to do the world's simplest reflection. Smiley face, straight face, unsmiley face. How'd you do on meeting your goal? And they were brutal, right? These kids for self-assessment, they're always so much more brutal than I would be, right? They were disappointed in themselves that they didn't get to things. They were frustrated with things. And this is good to make a record of, because I think that overall the makerspace is an incredibly amazing place, right? But it's actually an amazing place that's about up to here in frustration 9/10 of the time, right? The main thing I teach kids is how not to get pissed off when everything goes wrong.
Yes.
And sometimes I fail at teaching that, right? And then I have to teach them how to apologize to a room full of people for losing your shit, for losing your stuff. Should we clap there, Jason? Cut that out. For losing your stuff when things go wrong, right? And you're like, oh, hey, guys.
Which is just a good life skill. I mean, so one of the things that I think has stuck out to me. I was like, that is why I like this guy. I'm the co-director of the Central Texas Writing Project at Texas State. So the National Writing Project, I was just there for the annual meeting in St. Louis. And the Writing Project has impacted my professional experience. I had just finished my first year teaching when I went through the Writing Project, and that was 19 years ago. So I think what you talk about.
Yeah, I was 98.
I was 90, the 99. And so the whole idea of constructivism, how you make meaning from situations. So in writing, it's making meaning from those experiences and then building on what that meaning is to construct the next level of understanding, whether it's writing or literacy or creating or whatever it is.
Well, and
all of those standards are woven into that process or that structure, which I think you're right. You were talking about it being like the best kind of literacy because that's what we're doing. We're making meaning out of stories, nonfiction, experiences, blog posts, and I think that it's powerful what you said in a world where things seem more and more broken. Our job as educators is to help these kids really understand how we fix things. And that's a very metaphorical kind of relationship, but that's really when we give kids these opportunities to struggle and iterate and fail and try again in not just the makerspace, but in all of, more and more areas of our, of our school day. And then I think that it can only serve those kids more by setting up the systems that allow them to do that in ways that are healthy and, like you said, focused on community and equity and those things that may not.
You structure it in a way where you're going to get to the conversations that you feel are important.
Right.
But at the same time, you get there by way of the choices they're making and the interests that they have. When I started working as a tech integration specialist, one of the first times I made a video with kids, near the end of the process, I'm trying to wrap it up, and one of the kids comes to me and they're like, "It's not right yet." What do you mean? I'm packing up the iPad card. I've got another class to run. I'm like, what? Can I do it again? It's not right yet. And the English teacher in me is like, wait, this child is asking to revise. And it's the most powerful thing about video. And it's what motivates me to use video, have the kids create videos in my class a lot, is they have such a natural ownership of the medium, so much more so than like the paragraph, which they still think has some sort of magic,
buzzkill.
Right. Like they're like, paragraphs. And then I'm like, no, you're just taking ideas and putting them in chunks so we can remember what they were, please. No. But when you ask them to make a video, they're like willing to script it.
Yeah.
And then they're willing to revise, and they're like, oh yes, this is how videos are made. And they don't get mad at me when the video needs more work, because they can see that it needs more work. They can see that their ideas aren't clear. And when they did it in writing and I told them their ideas weren't clear, they thought I was mad at them.
Well, and also I think they understand that a video has an authentic audience much more so than they're like, what are they going to do with that paragraph? Am I giving
where is your paragraph? Right. Like
teacher,
other than sitting in school, where are they interacting directly with paragraphs?
Right. So I think that goes back to kind of the writing project, is really that authentic audience. Are we doing this just to do it? Because there's no more buy-in to a paragraph that they know only the teacher is going to see, as there is like in a worksheet or in a notebook or something that they don't see the value. But like with a video, they know their peers are going to see it. They know that their parents.
Well, you've also got to make sure you publish that somewhere, right? Make sure you have a space where you can do that in accordance with your school's social media policies.
Right.
But yeah, because that's the published piece is you get that out there, you get it shared, and the parents can see it and their peers can see it, and they're like, and it's the end of the video because they're like, and be sure to like and subscribe. I'm like, child, you are in kindergarten.
I know. Yep. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But I think you're exactly right.
Fantastic. I could sit and listen to that discussion all day. So many things you hit on. One thing I just want to come back to that I always try and lobby Jason on what to name the episodes when he puts them up. And I think this one would be the one where we make decisions with Sam Patterson.
Right.
I love when there's always like a great quote that comes out and you always just think, I hope I don't miss it, but it always stands out whenever it comes. And I really like that the most important thing you do in your makerspace is make decisions. And I think that
makes it accessible too, right? Because like everybody can make decisions. And yet if you look at like the most technically complex thing I try to figure out how to let students make, it's decisions, right? It's actually really hard to build student choice into the daily experiences of kids. And it's hard to construct lessons and be ready for things where, a kid can say, oh, I want to do this. And you can say, okay, we can, right? Or to know how to kind of interact with the student as they're making a decision, so the decision that they make is one you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's good stuff. Well, Sam, thanks for chatting with us today. I think
it's been fun.
The surface. We didn't get to talk about llamas very much, which is a little bit
hardly at all. Llama Files Desert Walks. Yeah, Llama Files Desert Walks on the Facebook. That's LLAMAPHILE, Llama File.
All right, I'm gonna have to check that out because I'm intrigued.
I don't update it very often, but that's where it is.
I'm intrigued about this other side of Sam. I've known you for a while, and I don't know much about the llama thing because you're always at school, and that explains it. You live like a really long ways away from where you work. So here's where we're going to move next. As we do every episode, we like to just do
the lightning round.
Yeah. See,
for those of you not watching, there's a puppet that just came up.
Sam,
I was like, whoa.
I don't know if I can. Maybe I'll need to just watch some tutorials and make my own puppet. But I'm like, maybe at ISTE we need to do a puppet making, like just out in the Bloggers Cafe or something.
Right, rogue puppet making, very popular.
And then I can make like the official puppet,
like
of the Stories in EDU podcast.
Pop-up shop.
At Q a couple years ago, Cheryl Morris and I ransacked the exhibit hall and created a puppet in the hallway almost exclusively out of things found in the exhibit hall. So it was like a Troxel tote bag with a couple of Codesmith buttons for, TechSmith buttons for eyes. Yeah, it was some quality stuff.
Is incredible. I don't even know what to say. So, lightning round time. That was a little bit of an aside, but I'm super jealous of the puppet. So, as we do every episode, we go through the game of stories made by the Bretzman Group. Sam, we're going to start with you. And then I'll start the time once you start talking. Here is the prompt that you are responding to. So you got 1 minute, tell a quick little story about encouraging front-end student choice. Seems topical. Tell a story about how you encourage students to choose a path for their learning that allowed all students or groups of students to go in their own direction. What did you learn from the process, and how did you act as their GPS on their journey?
So we use design thinking as a lens for making in our makerspace, and with the sixth graders, we really try to give them a whole lot of choice. Earlier in the year, we ran create a how-to that they could choose any topic and make a how-to video. It was, you have a 4-week project to learn something or do something or address one of your needs. So what is your need and what are you going to do? So today I gave them 6-slide Google slide deck with different prompts like what is your need, what is your plan for day 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And we spent a lot of time talking about what kinds of needs we might have and how we might address them. And like if we really wanted to learn to cook, what was the need we were addressing? How specific could we be? Because we only had 4 class periods, which is really just about 6 hours. it's really challenging because the kids look at you like, well, I have no idea. And you have to say, hey, there's that thing you've been talking about every class. I keep saying, could you stop talking about that thing and do that thing we're supposed to be doing? I thought you would be doing that already by now. And they're like, oh.
Nice. Right on the money.
With such an authentic
like
ending.
Rappers, like when rappers add in like the yo 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 thing to
And then they just go
saying the beat, like that's what you just did.
Right. There was a poetry degree that specialized in performance poetry before the doctorate, but I, don't talk too much about that.
And I feel bad. I should have been referring to you as Dr. Patterson all night. And I got to be honest, I had quite forgotten about the doctorate.
Right.
That was pretty recent. That was back in the fall, right?
No, that was 12.
You've been a doctor
12?
for the entire time I've known you.
Probably, yeah.
Oh, I
Right.
need to be a better friend, Sam.
Oh,
No, it's okay. I prefer to be Sam. It's okay.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you, Dr. Patterson, for that wonderful story. It was exquisite. Next, we will be moving on to Mandy. Mandy, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Go ahead.
So this isn't something that I actually have created myself, but I got to participate in. So I've been subject to a lot of bad PD. And this year, one of our digital learning coaches have put together an experience for the instructional coaches called DigiLearn. And it's basically just letting us go through these different modules of digital learning tools and ways that we can support teachers with technology. But there are a lot of aspects to the modules that I already am proficient in. And so every time we go, you get choice. You get to break up and say, I want to do this. I want to listen to this person, or I want to go through this playlist. I want to do this here, or I want to create something on my own. And it's very highly based on choice, your goals as an individual. And it has been very empowering to a lot of the coaches because we're not having to sit through things that we really don't need.
Beautiful. Yeah, man, you're getting good. All right, I have to answer this question. Okay, tell about how you encourage students to choose a path for their learning that allows students groups to go in their own direction. Okay, we'll see if this qualifies. You can be the judge of this. So back when I was in the classroom, which is beginning to look further and further in the rearview mirror, I guess I should say back in the day when I was in my own classroom exclusively, I redesigned my 7th grade computer applications class to be completely self-paced. So, I mean, with computer applications, it's pretty, I shouldn't say simple to do that, but students are learning how to use the computer programs and how to do different things with them. So I set it up in such a way as they could go and they could choose any of these 50 skills I designated and read or watch something to learn how to use the skill. And then they had to then in turn do something with that skill that could teach somebody else how to use it or use it for their own context. They could do skills in whatever order they wanted to. They could complete the class as fast as they wanted to. And they were all kind of got to do their own thing, and it was really neat. It wasn't perfect. If I was still there, it would be way better. But that was a good experience. Fiend. If you're listening to this on iTunes, I feel a little bad because you're missing out on
you're missing the sub show.
The puppet display. Although I'll be honest, I'm not sure exactly how Zoom shows up in terms of the YouTube thing. I think it only shows the big screen.
That would be a shame. Did you know, you likely didn't, that Zoom is the preferred video teleconference for the National Puppetry Museum in Atlanta?
I didn't know that.
It turns out that video conferencing frame rate gets really important if you're trying to do the mouths of puppets and whatnot. So, yeah.
All things that I didn't know that I needed to know.
Right.
But this is, I believe, on the UConn campus, and it probably is because I searched UConn on Google Photos, and the photo came up. I love Google Photos, as creepy as that is. Let me see if you can see that. So this is on, right off
Ballard.
the campus.
Oh, Ballard Institute and Museum of Puppetry. Oh, cool.
And I'm like, I had to take a picture because I thought of you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Dr. Patterson.
Well, if I get a second, I'll say it's super important to have a lot of fun in your classroom. And if you can meet the challenge of letting kids follow their own interests and really get comfortable as a amplifier of kids' interests and frame what you do as giving kids access to awesome, it really is possible to have a lot of fun.
Excellent. Sam, where can people find out more about you aside from the llama files desert walker thing?
Right, which is like the 20th place I would list if you wanted to find things about me. But really, if you want to find out all about Sam Patterson, you can check out mypaperlessclassroom.com. That's my blog, and we'll hopefully have links to anything you could want. You can find me over on YouTube. Sam Patterson EDD will usually get you there. And I'm on the Twitter at SAMPATUE.
Sam Patui. All right. Mandy, it's been fun. Did you have a good time tonight?
Always a blast. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you, Sam. I appreciate you talking with
Mandy.
us.
You bet.
Cool.
Next time we'll have to hear from that thing hanging on the wall behind you.
You know, I'm in Texas. That's what it is. Josh once said, every room that you zoom in, there's a skull in the background. Like,
I bought a stuffed llama head at Target, and I've got some fishing line run up to the ears, and I'm going to be hooking them up to servos on a hummingbird kit, I think. So, you know, I'm always thinking of like, how could I turn that into an animatronic?
it's like, see, when Billy Big Mouth Bass came out, we never knew that it was going to be this educational.
He's totally hackable, by the way. If you're bored, Google that or put it into YouTube, hacking Billy Big Mouth.
Okay,
People have
I'm
done
sure
amazing
my
things with that.
14-year-old son will be right on that.
Yes.
And that's a story for another time. Can't wait till we exclusively have Mandy tell us about that. But whether you're in Texas or California or Wisconsin or wherever you may be listening to this podcast, thanks for joining us on Stories in EDU once again. And we hope you join us every Tuesday for another new episode where we get to hear great stories from educators just like Sam, just like Mandy, and just like you. Have a great night, morning, day, wherever you may be, at whatever time it may be. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Stories in EDU podcast. Please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, thanks again.